Welcome back to the FKB Physio podcast. I'm Frances Brown. I am the owner of FKB Physio and obviously of this podcast. So it's the start of January and I just wanted to do a quick episode about health and what health means to me, because I suppose at this time of year you get all these kind of new health kicks and things like that, and there's a lot on social media about people making New Year's resolutions relating to their health. And I suppose as a health professional, I wanted to give you my take on it. So I'm a physiotherapist. I only have a small scope of practice within providing health advice. So what I would say is that I'm not providing health advice in this podcast. I am giving my opinion. I suppose it's an educated opinion when it comes to specific aspects of health. And there are others that I'm really completely outside of my scope to comment on. To give a bit of background, I have worked as a physio in a hospital, like a public hospital, in a gym, and in a private practice setting. And I'd say currently I'm a private practice setting. Even though I'm based in gyms, they're these very niche gyms that aren't your sort of normal gym vibe. But I have worked in gyms before. And what health looks like in those three different environments is completely different. And sometimes I really feel like the people in each environment have had little to no exposure of the others. If you're someone who's chosen to take a step inside a gym and exercise, you're already in a completely different world to a huge percentage of the population. When you hear people talking about how people need to just start exercising and go on a diet, and then you actually see these people out there who are really struggling, you just realize how much that advice is completely missing the mark. I think it's important to think about, because people talk about discipline and motivation, and if you're a privileged person with some money and you're not scrounging around for your next meal or having to work like 3 jobs or trying to look after 10 family members, there might be elements of truth to that. But to even sit back and go, I'm going to choose to go on a walk today, makes you incredibly privileged. And I'm very aware of that. And so I feel like I'm even more privileged than a lot of people because I don't currently have anyone depending on me. I'm in a comfortable situation. So all the things I say that I'm going to talk about in this podcast that are the steps I take towards my health, I fully recognize that they're coming from this privileged position where I have time, opportunity, access, money to do these things for my health. And again, the people on social media talking about health and healthy behaviors, to me anyway, it feels like they've never thought about the fact that some people don't have a choice. Some people can't choose to go on a walk because they're struggling just to get by. So all of that to say that I think a lot of the general discourse around health, especially in like the fitness industry and online, actually comes from this like very narrow-minded privileged space. A space which I'm about to walk straight into, because let's be honest, that is the space I live in myself. Modifiable health factors, so factors about your health that you are able to control. That's where I live as a physio. I'm here to help you modify the aspects of your health that you can. And don't forget that there are aspects that you cannot. And as annoying as it is, there are a huge amount of genetic factors that we can't see and don't know are there that impact our health. And once again, I feel like the fitness industry doesn't know about those things. Even as a physio, I'm pretty hazy about genetics, but I definitely know that your genetics play a huge role in the health conditions you may or may not end up with. And a lot of the time you can't do anything about it. And there's a lot of people who, again, like judging people for their health, which is it's crazy when you think about it, right? Like, I can't even give an example because I know that there'll be someone out there going like, yeah, it is that person's fault that they got insert health condition here. So you can only control so much about your health. You can't control everything about it. And I think that is an important point to make, because if you are someone who values your own health, it could be very upsetting if something happened to you that was out of your control. So I suppose it's that whole thing, like, accept that you can't control all of it, but control the bits you can, right? I want to talk about the things that I personally consider things that I do for my own health. And not saying I'm an expert or the authority at all. I am talking about what I do for myself. So the first thing is I am very interested in getting enough sleep. I think that getting not enough sleep is glorified by the fitness community and probably like the business owner community as well. And I don't really know why. Like, it's such a weird flex. Like, oh, I only got 5 hours sleep and then I don't know, ran a marathon, or, you know, I got up at 5 a.m. to train when I went to bed at 11. It's kind of like, to me, that's a really weird flex, because I'm like, but that's not good for you. Like, if you had to get minimal sleep because you have a baby or you've got to go to work or something, like it's out of your control and you can't help it and you're just doing your best, like that's so fine. But if you're making this point of like, I don't get enough sleep and it's a thing I'm showing off about, as a health professional and someone that cares about health, I don't understand that. I'm not going to actually quote any research in here because a lot of this stuff is sort of generic, general advice, and you can look it up yourself. And it's sort of like stuff you can find on the World Health Organization website or Australian government website. Most people agree that you need to get a certain number of hours of sleep a night. Yes, it is different for everybody, and I think the accepted thing is sort of between 6 to 8. But a lot of people are getting around with inadequate sleep, and to be honest, like, it is not good for you. There's thoughts that there might be links to Alzheimer's or dementia. It's definitely associated with increased risk of injury. You know, the social media ideal of health apparently is that you get up at 5 and then you spend an hour journaling and then you go on a walk and, you know, you've already done all that stuff. And I always find that stuff like very jarring, because I'm like, well, I hate getting up early. I'm not lazy. I put as many hours into my day as everybody else. I just start my day a few hours later. Again, there's these ideals that people push as being good and admirable, but they're not actually based in reality. They're based on what someone did and had success with, and then they tell everyone it's what to do. What's interesting to me is that I used to go to bed for 7 hours and I felt terrible all the time and just thought I was lazy and whatever. And now I actually realize that I need to physically be in bed for more like 8 to 9 to actually get 7 to 8. And I feel drastically different if I'd had 7 or 8 hours sleep compared to 6. So when I've had less than 7, I really struggle to stay awake when I'm sitting still. And I know because I just finished a master's, I had to sit still and study a lot. And it would be really, really unpleasant if I'd had less than 7 hours sleep, because I honestly couldn't stay awake. And then sometimes when I'd had 8, I could just sit and focus for hours. So I think it is something to look at, and where possible, don't obsess over it, but like acknowledge that getting adequate sleep isn't lazy and it's actually healthy and it's probably good for your brain. The next one, I'm just going to talk extremely briefly about food because I'm not a dietitian. Personal trainers are also not dietitians. So like, I actually don't think personal trainers or doctors should be giving dietary advice. There are people that did 4 years at uni for that. They know a lot more, okay? But as a basic thing that everyone recommends is adequate fruit and vegetable intake. And like, let's be honest, I don't get it. I tried for a few months last year. I always get the fruit, 2 fruit, 5 veg. I always get the fruit and I probably get like 3 vegetable. Apparently 95% of the population doesn't hit that. And I think it's funny because all these people are going on these like hectic diets and, you know, thinking that gluten's bad for you and dairy's bad for you and this, that, and the other's bad for you. And it's like, hey, guess what? Actually, at a base, you just need to try and get fruit and vegetables. Like, almost no one's doing it. Let's just try and get that first. So adequate fruit and vegetable intake, which I don't do, but like, it's something I'm trying to do. And I really do think about it. Like, if I go away for the weekend or go on holiday, you know, I really notice like, okay, I'm literally not eating vegetables and that's unhealthy. I don't care about weight loss. I don't care about my body shape. That's not what it's about. It's about health. Like, what is good for the inside of my body? Fruit and vegetables have been associated with decreased cancer risk, decreased everything risk. Honestly, if you look it up, it's absolutely mind-blowing. So again, that's an indisputable one for me. I personally do focus on trying to get enough protein because I am into lifting weight and I want to maintain muscle mass or even build muscle mass as much as I can. I try to get 2 grams of protein per kilo of my body weight, and that's just a figure I've sort of come to with a fair bit of reading. And I did ask a dietitian patient of mine, thanks Mel, about what she recommended, and it's sort of around that. So again, you can look up your own sort of research there, but she said that most women do not meet their protein guidelines, and that is important for your bones and your muscles and losing your bone and density and muscle mass is terrible, really. And you do start losing it slowly from the age of 30. So fruit and vegetables, protein intake, and I do care about fiber intake as well, mainly because I guess if you're getting enough fiber from like natural sources, it tends to mean that you probably are getting a good sort of general quality of food. The other thing I wanted to say about food is that people go, oh, you work in health. And this is probably more when they think of me in my fitness role as opposed to my physio role. They're like, oh, I bet you don't eat chocolate, or I bet you don't drink alcohol. And it's just like, of course I do. This idea that it's unhealthy to eat anything that isn't sort of incredibly nutritious, I can't stand it. I really do recommend following dietitians on social media if that's your thing, who are, all the ones I follow are sort of like, try to eat generally nutritious food, but do not consider food as good or bad or cheat meals, because it's probably not really healthy. And again, this is where I see this stark difference between, and I hate to say it because I love the gym, but people in the gym, and not my gym because my gym's awesome, but people in the gym and the fitness industry, their definition of health and healthy eating as opposed to what might actually be healthy for you is completely different. So these people going on these extreme diets and becoming incredibly lean, I think most dietitians would argue that that is not healthy. A lot of the time women lose their periods doing this. Is it aesthetic? Sure. Is being aesthetic the same thing as being healthy? No. Is being really strong in the gym and having really good performance necessarily healthy? No. They're not the same thing. So performance, looking good, being hectic in the gym, eating a diet that means you lose lots of weight, none of those things actually mean that you're being healthy necessarily. So when I'm thinking about being healthy with my food, I think about fruit and vegetables. I think about protein and fiber. I do think about eating sort of like whole foods. And I would say I try and think about that for 80% of what I eat. And for 20% of what I eat food that I love the taste of. I actually love the taste of all the food I eat, because like, why would I eat food I don't like? But you know, I might eat like chocolate or have a glass of wine or whatever it is, because I love those things, and life is for living, and everything in moderation I think is fine. The next bit is probably the bit I can talk about with the most sort of authority, and it's exercise. So I think I am exposed to people who, two extremes. So I think the general narrative out there is that people aren't doing enough. And that's true. Apparently only 1 in 4 adults meet the WHO exercise guidelines. And it is a huge part of my job. It's like the main part of my job now, to encourage people to exercise. So just so you know how much exercise you're actually meant to be doing, the WHO, like World Health Organization, recommends, if possible, 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity, or at least 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic exercise, and 2 days a week of strength training. So they're the recommendations. So it's actually quite a lot. And they do say that the more you do, the better. You actually do have to do quite a bit to meet those guidelines. And they're quite lenient, like they can count vacuuming and stuff in the guidelines. So I think trying to meet WHO exercise guidelines is a good thing to do. However, I'm exposed to a lot of people that do way more. And that is not necessarily healthy either. So like if you're thinking of health as what is good for your body, what is going to make your body function well, reduce your risk of injury, reduce your risk of illness, feel good, that is healthy, right? There are a lot of people in the fitness industry who do a huge amount of exercise, and it's coming from a place of wanting to punish and change their body. And I am not judging anybody, and I know how hard this stuff is. But when I go into the gym and I see people do this awesome job, like they smash body attack or they do whatever, they do this really good workout and their body has just done this awesome thing for them, and then they go and step on the scale on the way out, I just think like, it's hard. It is hard. But when you do exercise, I guess ask yourself like, am I doing this? Is it in the best interest of my body? And like, I am someone who's probably inclined to overdo it. It's funny, like I don't view myself that way at all, but I suppose when I'm trying to look at it objectively from an outsider looking in, I'm on like the upper edge. And like it's funny because there's so many people doing way more. But again, like, is it healthy? I guess, you know, if you have had an injury or something really hurts or you're really tired and you don't really feel like it, are you exercising because that's the good thing to do for your body at that time? Or are you doing it because you feel like you have to? And I guess that's where I hate this rhetoric on the internet of like, no days off or no excuses or there's no such thing as a bad workout. And it's like, yeah, there is. There's a such thing as a bad workout. There's the extra run that the runner threw in that gave them a stress fracture. Or there's the extra workout session that someone threw in that meant that they were really tired all day at work because they needed that extra 2 hours of sleep. You know, like, it's not true at all. And I know that most people are not doing enough exercise, but there are this cohort of people that are doing too much. And I think that the general narrative out there around exercise can be not about health. The next thing I wanted to talk about, just real quick, I meant to talk about it in the food, but I forgot, it's just alcohol. Queensland government guidelines are that women should have no more than 10 standard drinks a week and no more than 2 in one sitting. And I think men's the same, except it's 14 a week. We live in Australia. We have a drinking culture. I obviously often have more than 2 drinks in one sitting. I do really try to not have more than 10 a week. So over Christmas and New Year, absolutely I did, which no one's perfect and I don't feel guilty about it. But I think I recently became aware of the fact that like a lot of people don't know that guideline's there. And I think it's like pretty important to know about because it's one of the big ones. Alcohol causes cancer everywhere it touches. Like it's quite alarming, really. It is. If people talk about toxins and stuff, I mean, to my understanding, most things aren't toxins, but like alcohol is. And smoking, obviously. I'm not even going to go there. But I think it is important to know when a GP told me like no more than 2 a day and no more than 10 a week, it just gives me something to think about. Okay, well, do I care about health? Do I care about the health of my organs? Well, yeah, I do. So I'm going to listen to that and I'm going to try to follow that guideline. The last thing is the thing that I'm the worst at and I don't know anything about, but I'm just going to bring it up, and it's about mental health. Because mental health is a huge part of physical health, right? And again, fitness industry, I think, has a lot of damaging narratives that are not actually about health. No bad days, no excuses, no days off, train even when you feel bad, get off a flight and go straight into the gym because you're so disciplined, like all this stuff. It is no good. Being incredibly disciplined, giving up all your sort of social everything to work towards like a fitness goal, that is fine if that's what you want to do. Like, it's so fine. Like, an Olympic athlete presumably gave up everything to get there, and that's all power to them. I'm just going to circle back to like the topic of the podcast, which is health. If you're interested in health and we're talking about health, I don't necessarily think those things are healthy. I'm not saying they're unhealthy. I'm just saying I'm a health professional and it is my job to encourage people to do what's best for their health. And people sacrificing like social life, just completely disregarding their mental health and how they feel, I think is obviously a recipe for disaster. The research, the sports psychology research is just so interesting. I've read a lot of it when I did my master's, but I couldn't quote any of it now. But the impact your mental health has on your physical health is huge. And I think it is massively overlooked in the kind of hustle culture thing. Again, I think people like with my personality are much more susceptible to listening to people telling you you're lazy, you need to work harder, you need to do more. It can be very damaging. And I suppose I would just say being aware of if you're stressed, if you are not happy, if you're struggling mentally, seeking help, even though it's apparently like very hard to get any help in Australia, but not downplaying it. And I know that like mindfulness is meant to be this big thing and I'm going to look into it so much more, but I haven't been doing it myself. Yeah. So I hope that has given you a little bit of a different perspective about what health actually might look like for people that have the option to choose to take active steps towards it. I'm interested in your thoughts about this one. And I will be back with another podcast in about a month or so. It's probably going to be another recording of Instagram Live But soon I will definitely be getting some people in to interview, which I'm looking forward to. So thank you for listening. FKB Physio Podcast. Check out my previous episodes. The last one was talking to Alex about Pilates.